Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and today we are going to be doing a bit of a guide or a video talking about the items. Now, we had this discussion last night on stream, and it made me realize that there is a lot to talk about, and I'm going to try to condense it down. I hope that I don't mess this up, but I'm going to do my best to talk about the items and how you can start picking the items like independently, because there's so much information surrounding characters and items that you need to know, and why an item is good, and we're just going to go through them all. I'm going to try to keep it brief, and we're going to talk about why you would take the item. So first and foremost, let's talk about battle items really quickly. There's really only, like, in my opinion, like 3, maybe 4 viable battle items, and your main ones are eject button, fluffy tail, full heal, and then goal getter is like kind of decent. X speed, it's okay. X attack, slow smoke, potion, they're just not that strong. There's really no character that automatically wants to pick one of these that I can think of anyways. Goal getter is just kind of cheesy. It's decently viable. Full heal is incredibly strong in the meta because of so much CC with the 40-second cooldown. Fluffy tail, incredibly good for burning objectives for the user that takes it. 25-second cooldown, really good for junglers, just certain people that have a lot of like damage shred. And then eject button is universally good on 70-second cooldown. So that's out of the way. Let's go ahead and start talking about items. So I'm going to go ahead and really quickly list off the items that are essentially good, pretty good, and then kind of bad. And I think that that'll give us a good starting point to start the actual item discussion. So good items are like scope lens, wise glasses, muscle band, score shield, focus band, buddy barrier. And there's a couple of niche items that are very good, and that's going to be energy amplifier and exp share. These two items are really good, but they're really niche, so you probably don't see them all the time or won't use them all the time. Every other item in the game, not very good. And we can talk about that here in a little bit, but not very good. The stacking items, I want to put some specific emphasis on the stacking items. Attack weight, score scaling, stacking, AOS cookie, health scaling, stacking, and then the special attack specs. These stacking items, they're all good. The thing is that the condition to get them to being to that good point requires that you score 6 times. If you look at it, when you score a goal, your attack is raised for the rest of the match. This bonus caps at 6 stacks. So these items are actually good. It's just, it requires a very strong condition to make them good. So that in itself automatically kind of kicks them down a notch, just because it's so hard to actually earn that value. But we'll talk about these items here in a little bit. So because I'm trying to do like a really quick information and do really strong information, I'm going to tell you right now, there are 3 defensive like items that are basically universal. You could use them on everybody, you're not going to, but I'm telling you, these are 3 of the best items in the game, and I'm saying that the defensives, and we'll kind of refer to these quite a bit this video. Score shield, incredibly strong, especially depending on who you put it on. Not going to be used on every single Pokemon, but incredibly strong. Gives you 10% HP shield, a really great flat HP in the early game, I mean for the whole game, and then, you know, will shield you. Obviously the 10% HP shield will shield you when you're trying to score. Then you have focus band, solid defense, both left you know, SP and defense side, and then whenever you get low on a 90-second cooldown, it will heal you for 14%. This is amazingly good for early game. It starts to taper off in mid game, still useful obviously, and then late game you kind of barely even notice that you have it because there's just so much damage and so much burst and things. Buddy barrier, of course, obviously super overpowered, and these numbers are the 30 variants, so you know they'll be a little bit lower if you're not using 30 items, but buddy barrier at 20, for example, will give you 400 HP flat, which is a lot of HP, really good. And then when you unite move, we'll give you 40% shield for you and an ally, you know, that's near you, your lowest health ally. So incredibly strong defensive items. We're going to refer to those here in a little bit. So now we need to talk about what makes an item good. What makes an item good in this game is usually not the stat lines of the item. That almost never matters when it comes to the items. It does matter a little bit, but not nearly as much. Let's look at muscle band, for example. Attack 15, attack speed 7.5%. Again, level 30, so don't think about the numbers too much. But what makes this item good is the item effect and the scaling percentage that's on it. Deal additional damage with basic attacks based on the target's remaining HP. So that means every single time you auto attack someone, you're dealing a percentage of their health that's remaining. That's just a lot of damage over time. Like every time you auto attack, it's just damage. And that's the thing about attack items in this game, not SP attack items. they're applied to either all of the attack scaling in the game, or they're applied to every single auto attack or every single basic attack. Special attacks, or boosted attacks rather, those are special, and I don't know how to explain the scaling there. I actually am not familiar, so I don't know. I wish I could give you information on boosted attacks, but every basic attack that's not a boosted attack will be physical damage, attack damage. So you see this attack 15, attack weight plus 18, and then it stacks. Every time you raise a physical attack or a regular attack, that will apply to an auto attack, and it will apply to physical attack or regular attack scaling, however you want to look at it. So physical attack items in this game are pretty good, just because across the board they apply to so many different things. Now obviously there's like Floatstone, for example, which is not good because the effect's not great. It doesn't really scale. The flat stats on it aren't great. You have to be out of combat for 8 seconds, and that's why, like Assault Vest, this item's not very good. It requires you to be out of combat for 8 seconds. It just takes too long. Same thing, takes too long. That's why these items are kind of bad. In general, Floatstone's just kind of bad because it doesn't scale. It's just flat numbers with some speed increase that you'll eventually lose because you'll be fighting anyways. So that's why physical items in this game are incredibly good. They're very reliable. I mean, even Scope Lens, it increases your chance to crit, increases the damage that you do when you crit. I mean, and then it scales with the 75% of attack stats. So attack items in this game, very, very consistent. Now, this is where a lot of this discussion has been coming from. Why, we started talking about it, because other people in the community have been talking about it. We want to talk about SP attack and how you can tell what to put, like what items to put on what characters. And this does apply for attack or like normal attack damage as well, but it really shines when talking about SP attack. So we have to look at characters to decide what items are good and how to start building them out. So let's look at there's really good examples in here. We're going to look at Mr. Mime, and we're going to look at like Cramorant. So Mr. Mime and Cramorant. Let's start with Cramorant. So if you look on, and first of all, we're using UnitedDB for all of this, which is a really, really great resource. If you look at UnitedDB, they have these equations, and these equations will show you the damage, how the damage gets applied to a character's ability. So let's look at something typical on Cramorant. Surf. He's got 2 hits, 2 equations for the first hit going out and the second hit coming back. So we're going to just look at this. So this equation will always have a flat section, which is 390 damage, and it'll always have a level scaling section, so it's 9 times the level minus 1. And then you'll have a percentage SP or percentage attack scaling, depending on what kind of character you're playing. So this means that you take a percentage of that character's SP value, and that is how much gets applied into this equation. And that's like an isolated section of the equation. So there's 3 parts of the equation: the level scaling equation, or the SP percentage, the level scaling, and then the flat. And that's how you determine how much damage a person can do. So in order to know whether or not you should use an item like Wise Glasses, you just need to look at their scalings. And you can even take it a little bit further and actually do the math on how much damage these items will do, and you can test it out and things like that. But really, this is the layman's, right? Like, if you want to know if Wise Glasses is good on a character, you need to see high scaling numbers. So let's look at Mr. Mime. So like Cramorant, 75%, 112%, formidable numbers, like great numbers for something like Wise Glasses. And again, Wise Glasses is going to increase your SP value by a flat amount, and then it increases it by a percentage before joining this equation. So let's look at Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime, for example, has a very high scalings. So while I don't necessarily consider Mr. Mime great for Wise Glasses, if you want to do extra damage on him, there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting Wise Glasses on him. You can run him more tanky, and you can lean into those defensive items, like we said, like Scorch Shield, Focus Band, Buddy Barrier, because those are going to always have really great value, especially on a character like Mime. But if you're looking to do this extra confusion damage, 204%, you can put on Wise Glasses, increase your SP value before jumping into this equation to make that damage higher. So now let's look at a character, trying to think of who doesn't have great scalings. Venusaur. Let's look at a character like Venusaur. This character is an SP attacker, has terrible scalings. 37%, 4% on the area, and it's 10 ticks. Let's look at Solar Beam. 27%. These are terrible scalings. Putting Wise Glasses on this character will give you nothing. And the reality is that if you look at this scaling, even though this character doesn't scale with physical attack, and then you kind of compare it to what Muscle Band does, where you're getting percentage damage on every single auto attack, increasing your attack speed, which means you're going to reach more boosted attacks, increasing your physical attack in general, so every time you do hit, it hits harder. You're going to see that a character like Venusaur is going to get way more value out of running Muscle Band over running Wise Glasses, because the scalings just aren't there. And again, for a little bit of extra context, I'm not going to go into too much math on this video. You need to know that in order to fully run through these equations, you have to do the math on it. You have to look at their stats. Let's say pick a level. Let's say level 9. So then you have 403. Then you take that number, you add the Wise Glasses value. Then you add 7% of that total value. Then you throw it into the equation to find out how much damage you'll do. So you can really go through and do a lot of the testing and the math. But really, the simple reality is that you just need to look at the scalings. That's the simplest version. And I want to give y'all some simple information. I know you have to kind of run through this whole video to get it. But that is kind of how you decide what items to go where. I would say otherwise, you really need to look at the theme of your character, right? Like all-rounders. These characters, they want to have like 1 to 2 attack items or 1 to 2 defensive items, depending on your play style. So like Lucario, attack weight, score shield, focus band, or, you know, score shield, focus band, buddy barrier if you want to go more defensive, or, you know what I mean, you can get the trend. Garchomp, I like playing tanky Garchomp, and I like playing like attack Garchomp, so I'll go scope lands, muscle band, buddy barrier, or I'll go you know, maybe muscle band, focus band, buddy barrier. You can kind of see the trend. As for attackers, this is where it gets really confusing, because you have the physical attackers like Cinderace and Greninja who don't want SP items at all, and then you have the SP scaling attackers, Cramorant, Gardevoir, Ninetales, Pikachu, Venusaur. But the reality is, based on their scaling, that's where you need to start making decisions. With physical attackers in this game, it's very, very simple. You put on the strong physical attack items, you make some subjective choices about your builds based on like the current meta of the items, like knowing that the attack scaling items are good, but not necessarily the best in the meta currently, and then that's how you make some decisions. Ninetales, a great example, just like Venusaur. You just don't have crazy scaling here. There's just not that much crazy scaling. Not to mention Aurora Veil is an incredible ability that doesn't even have scaling on it, so you're really not an SP attacker. Look at this, even on Blizzard, like just ridiculously low scalings. So like putting Wise Glasses, putting SP attack specs on this character, even though the character is an SP attacker, it's useless. It does nothing for the character comparatively to the damage that you could get from Muscle Band, or comparatively to the practically impossible to compare value that you could get on just running defensive items, because defensive items in this game are, like we said, especially the big 3, score shield, focus band, buddy barrier, they're solid. They're very, very solid, and it's really, really hard to compare value of, say, like focus band to some of the other attack items and SP attack items. So long story short, to kind of give a little bit of a wrap up on this whole discussion, SP items in this game are pretty weak, but that doesn't mean that Wise Glasses isn't good. It doesn't mean that Wise Glasses isn't good on certain characters, and those characters that you're going to be wanting to use it on are like Cramorant, Gengar, Gardevoir, characters that have incredibly high scaling, people that are going to use these stats, that are actually going to use the stats. Look at Gardevoir really quickly. Again, same thing. You know, this is a relatively low scaling, but then you have like Future Sight and Psyshock, which Psyshock hits so many times. Again, these numbers aren't actually huge, but the fact that Psyshock hits so much and it continues this equation, or if you're using Future Sight, has a pretty big scaling, but I don't really like Future Sight. Not the point. Characters that truly are going to use those kinds of stats. And then you have people like Pikachu. Again, same thing. Really, really low scaling. And this is how you decide what items to put where, and decide what kind of playstyle you want to niche yourself into, because the reality is, like, on certain characters that have these low scalings, especially if they're ranged attackers, you're going to get more value out of Muscle Band. So hopefully I helped clear this up a little bit. I didn't deep dive super crazy, and like I said, as for the items I didn't touch on, Assault Vest, Leftovers, Shell Bell, Rocky Helm, Floatstone, like these items, to put it simply, they're just not good. The scaling items are like, there's kind of like 3 tiers of items. Or really like 4 tier. There's like S tier items, and you know, there's like a 2, 3, 4 of them maybe: muscle band, score shield, focus band, buddy barrier. Then you have like A tier items like scope lens, wise glasses, EXP share, energy amplifier. Again, very niche items here. Then you have like B tier items, which are like the scaling stacking items, because they're good. They're also kind of niche. The scaling stacking items, and then you have like everything else, which is like crap tier. Like you pretty much never want to use them at all. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I hope I did a decent job explaining this. I know that items are confusing because you have to run it down per character. You have to like look into it and decide what you want to do with it. You know, how do you want to play these characters? How do you want to, you know, build them out? So as always, friends, be sure to be kind to one another, tell someone that you love them, and I'll see you on the next video.